Well, great to be here. Thanks for having me. I see some familiar faces in the audience, so hello. Great. I'm going to get to work, I suppose, and give you a little bit of insight into what I see today as a VC and what I've learned as a founder, that startups, companies, whoever is building with AI is doing right or is doing wrong. Or not quite informed, if not wrong. But before I get into that, I suppose, I am a bit biased towards execution, so I kind of like to know where speakers' thoughts, experience, knowledge, advice is coming from. So I'm just going to anchor it in that a little bit to kind of see why am I talking about, what am I talking about, and where does the knowledge come from? So back in 2014, we incorporated in 2015, but back in 2014, my co-founder and I started an AI-first company. What that means is that we did not build products, we built algorithms from scratch, wrapped them into APIs, and sold them into our industry being the talent acquisition space. So anywhere where there were CVs and jobs, we plugged into those players and we basically built recommender engines for them. Back in 2020, a company called iSIMS, headquartered in Homedale, New Jersey, in the old Bell Labs building, which is a very cool building, and it still holds in the basement all the information of all the Nobel prizes that were won out of that building, because there were more than one. A company based there acquired us. They were a client of ours, and funnily enough, they discovered us in a due diligence process when they bought another client of ours. That started, I suppose, my journey as a VP of AI in this company. And we built, not only that we built product from Dublin, but we owned AI strategy from here, because then in the next few years, iSIMS acquired 5 more companies, took in 1.2 billion in funding from a PE. We already had 1.2 billion from another PE. We took in another 1.2, acquired 5 companies, and then my team here in Ireland owned the roadmaps of these new companies. We took in all the data science resources, we hired more here, and we executed on the roadmap while maintaining the AI strategy from here. So from that point of view, anyone who knows anything about M&A, we were successful because we didn't just become a build shop, we maintained strategy from here. And we did all of this, I felt it's important to kind of say, we did all of this in a time of change. We had 3 CEOs and no CEO for 7 months. We had an office of the CEO. So a lot of change, as it happens in these PE companies that are growing really fast. They're buying a lot. They get the CEO changed, C-suite changed, and all of that. But in all of that, we maintained, again, strategy from here, AI leadership from here, and we continue to grow. And even after me leaving in October of last year, the team is still growing here, and they will always be my team, and I'm proud of that. And then in October, well, officially in January of this year, I joined Delta Partners. Delta Partners, they're venture capital firm. We have a live fund. We have money to deploy. We've been around for 30 years. We're a generalist fund, so we invest in pretty much everything except maybe medical devices that go into the body. We're fundraising now as well, so we're going to have a new fund next year. We still have investment for 4 to 6 startups in the current fund, so I am on the lookout, and check sizes anywhere from 200K to 1.5 to 2 million. And we're very good at following our money across 145 deals that we did in 30 years. We put about 7 checks on average per company. And some of our biggest wins were when everyone else gave up. So we are good like that. We're a partner-led firm, so we become the right-hand person of the CEO. And that's kind of how we function. So moving on, just a little bit more about opening before and a bit more context setting, I suppose. So opening.io, we were building recommender engines, as I said, within the talent acquisition space. So things like matching and ranking candidates in relation to jobs, skill inference and recommendations, CV summarizing, salary recommendations, anything and everything within the world of talent acquisition. And really, I kind of wanted, let me see if this works, yes. So this is a view from our actual database. I walked over to my ex-co-founder and CTO and said, can I have a video of our vector DB and kind of what are we doing in there? So this was our world. Again, we weren't a product company, we were an AI company. So what we did is we understood the world of talent acquisition data, and we were constantly building our spaces of whatever it might be of context, job titles, skills, and all sorts of different things that we could do within that. The reason why I'm showing this is that this is one of the biggest lessons that I suppose I've learned in building an AI company, how data is the moat. And later on, I'll also say how it's one of the things that I probe now as a VC with companies that come in and say that they're building an AI something. And it's where I see a lot of, because of the unknown unknowns, I see strategic vision that is lacking, or really understanding of what data means for an AI company. It literally means your future revenue model. It literally means your future features or products. It means a lot of things, and it's often not as well understood as one would want it to be understood when everyone is building AI. But I'll get back into that very soon. So iSense acquired us back in 2020. So at the point of acquisition, we had a couple of hundred models, so algorithms. They acquired us, big company. I think they were at about 250 million ARR when they acquired us. They were getting close to 600 million ARR when we left. About 600 million CVs in their database at any point, which translates into, I will say, gazillions of data points, because that's how it was. We just had a lot of data. 3 million global platform users, 5.5 million people were hired through this platform in 2024, so that's all 2024 data. And my team, because iSense was owned by TA Partners and Vista Equity Partners, as well as Susquehanna, but they owned a very small bit. So these private equity companies, within their world and their 100 billion in assets, we were in the top 1% of data science teams that they were working with. We spent about 50% of our time in R&D, which was very different than any other of the engineering teams in this company. We had to allow the teams to just think and play and experiment. Very, very quickly, some of the things that we did once we got acquired. If you see attract, engage, hire, and advance, kind of the arrows there. So they had a full suite of platform. Imagine landing on the career side, figuring out, is there a job for me in this company? And their career sites would be used from anyone from Pepsi to Johnson & Johnson to Microsoft to whoever. The chatbot that you might be talking to when you're trying to find a job, then your CV coming into the applicant tracking system. So the interviewing software, whatever it was, we were building AI for all of those spaces. Different things, job matching, job recommendation, candidate ranking, career pathing. Then we had the data layer, and then we started building a bunch of LLM-based features that weren't requiring a lot of accuracy, but I'll get into that a little bit later. And all of this, before I go into lessons learned, wrap it with a bow, we built it responsibly. Everyone talks about the EU AI law and AI and Europe and innovation versus the regulatory landscape. I have a contrarian view because I have built in a highly regulated industry. I find regulation great. I find that regulation is good for business. I find that regulation helps you build a product that actually works for everyone, and I'll talk about that later, and we've done that. So we got audited for the first time. We had to surrender all our training data 4 years ago under the New York City AI law. So the EU AI law is trying to figure out, okay, how will oversight work? New York was doing that 3-4 years ago. So, anyway, I have a lot to say about this when I hear people giving out about the EU and what we're doing, where in use cases and industry where we need to care about ethics, where we need to care about bias, where we need to care about the certain use cases, this is how it's going to be everywhere, not just in Europe, regardless of whatever is going on in the world and geopolitics and yada yada. So anyway, we built in a highly regulated industry, and we'll talk about this because there's very, very important lessons learned about how to build an AI product, and they sit in things like explainability, and that ties to UI UX, and it sits in in things like bias and fairness. That again sits in deployment of specific features. In our world, bias and fairness was an evergreen roadmap item. We constantly tested for various different scenarios. So I need to remember to breathe. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, lessons learned. So I do? Okay. I have too much to say. Surprisingly. Lessons learned. So one of the biggest things that I suppose I've learned in building an AI company, an AI product, and now sitting and looking back at the world doing the same thing through different means or whatever, and we're in a different time than 10 or 11 years ago, is the unknown unknowns. If you haven't done, you don't know what you don't know unless you did it. And I suppose that can apply to many different things, but it is just so clear when you bring it down to engineering, when you bring it down to product building, when you bring it down to UI UX, when you bring it down to all of these cases, and you haven't quite done it, you just don't know what you don't know. So I'm trying today to kind of bring some of these things to light and kind of go, oh, I didn't quite think about this like this, or whatever it might be. So I know everyone, data is blamed as the thing that makes things biased, and data is also seen as the thing that you should harvest and build on, and all of that. But data really is the bedrock, but in ways that I feel that sometimes startups or companies that are trying to implement these technologies on top of data that they have don't quite get. So and it is defensibility, right? It's not the model anymore. It kind of could be, but it's not really, unless you are OpenAI. But let's face it, there's about, 7, 8 of them in the world. So for us, when we built opening.io, every feature in the product was also a data collection engine. It wasn't random. And let me kind of give you a little bit of insight and maybe an exercise that you can apply to things that are relevant within your professional life. So let's say you want to build a matching engine to match people to jobs, right? And let's say you start very simply. You're sitting at a desk that's empty, and you have one paper in front of you, a CV. And you go, okay, this is the world I am going to live in. This is the world I'm going to build in. And we look at a CV and we kind of go, okay, if we want to match people to jobs, what information will we use, and what does that tell us about the person? So let's say company name. What does company data give you? It gives you industry, it gives you size, it could give you tech stack. It gives you a lot of information that once you have a lot of it at scale, you can kind of start comparing and understanding that a product manager working at Microsoft will be different than a product manager working at some SME, right? So the company information itself is not just a random name on the thing, it comes with a bunch of other information, right? Let's talk about titles, right? Titles are important. If I want to match people to jobs, I'm going to use titles, but titles are very, very messy. You could be called marketing executive or marketing ninja. What the heck is a marketing ninja, and how will the machine understand as it learns about marketing and as it learns about ninja that they belong together, and on that sky of data that I've showed you earlier on a few slides ago, they're close to each other. So normalizing that is the very uninspiring work that data scientists need to do every day. Then you get skills. You have skills that people give you, and we're all crap at building CVs and job descriptions. So people will give you some skills. By the way, this is a really bad example of how you should not build a CV if you want the machine to see it. But anyway, that's a different story. But let's say you have the skills that you declare. Oh, I have these 5 skills. What you can do with the machine that you have and the information and the data that you have is kind of go, well, this person said they have these 5 skills, but because we elevated all the skills in the world into this space, we know that there's 7 other skills that they probably also have. So now we're in a world of declared skills and derived skills. So every single data point on the CV can give you more than what the word says, right? And you build this kind of database of knowledge and you situated it into, and you start building the distances between all these concepts. And then what you do, you pop up the job description, right? Because in this world where you're building matching between a person and a job, you have the person and now you have the job. And the job is the team, it's the company, it's the requirements, the nice to have, the must haves. The job of your initial product is to elevate all of this into that data space that I showed you and kind of see how close or how far they are from each other. And that's what gives you a good match or a bad match, right? And that short list of 100 people applied, but these 20 with all the information that we have are the closest. And then, let's say you have and then ideally in time you have feedback loops. Well, out of 20 that the system gave you back, 5 got hired or 3 got hired. So you have these right path that you now own. You're not just a wrapper around a bunch of different products and you're kind of moving data around, but you don't own any of it and you don't, So now you kind of have feedback loops that say, yes, correct, hired. And then I'll double down with, that's the present, but what happens when you have a lot of it? What happens when you have 20,000 James Edwards? Well, you could start building career paths. And you kind of go, we looked at 20,000 James Edwards, and these are the steps that they took, and this is where the career went. We're looking at 20 other mini James Edwards that are coming up, on this path, and we can suggest which way they can go. Or you can just do talent mapping exercises. You could do a lot once you have more of this data, right? So often when I talk to startups, I go, what kind of data do you own? What happens? What kind of workflows do you own? What kind of data keeps coming back into your system? And what happens when you have a lot of it? What new features? How does all of this define your roadmap? And that is, and us in opening, and then the company that acquired us, we built our roadmap and all these, customer-facing features with the help of the data scientists. And it was a different type of build because the data scientists were living in this data and they were able to see, actually, because we have all these 5 things, we can now build a feature that does this. Without sitting close to data science, the rest of the product managers, they just couldn't imagine what is possible. So again, when I talk to startups, I go, how do you think about data? And where is all of that taking you in terms of roadmaps and maybe business pricing models, business models, yada yada. With building AI, scale is not a later problem. It can't be. Back in the day, when we built, we also learned that building AI and deploying AI are 2 different things, and they're hard. Today, you have all sorts of tools, and if you have money, you can make it happen. Back in the day, we actually built a vector database before the category existed. There were no vector DBs. This is, in brackets, a little bit, I wouldn't say regret, because regret isn't right, but it kind of is. Why didn't we spin out and build a vector DB company 11 years ago when there were like 2 small startups in Japan or something? But we had to do that. And I still remember, and I know that some of this might sound technical, but here, these are the unknown unknowns. I still remember sitting in front of Anne Herity, who was the founder and CEO of CPL, one of the largest Irish recruitment agencies. They had revenues of 600 million ARR. They were bought by a Japanese company. I'm in her office. I'm demoing this to her. and I hit click, and the list returns, the software returns a list in less than a second. It was fast. What the computation and everything that we had to do, and our response time was really, really, really fast. And she sits there and goes, never mind the accuracy of the thing, never mind, oh, AI is magical. She literally couldn't believe how fast it was, because their Salesforce platform that they were using, they were building these huge Boolean strings, and you would have to wait for minutes. I'm not kidding, for minutes for things to return. Anne ended up investing. I never asked her for money. She asked me for coffee, and she said, do you want money? And I said, yes, thank you. I will take your money. Right, but it was the ability to demonstrate, you know, from day one. We couldn't build an MVP. We had to build from scale from day one, because we were dealing with a lot of data, and we were, you know, and that's very typical of AI companies. Today, when I hear AI, people think of LLMs, people think of OpenAI, ChatGPT, whatever the anchor is in their head. AI is not just that, and it's never just one model, and the best companies understand this. We have a company in the portfolio currently in Delta. I didn't invest in them, it was before my time, Amy did. Dissect, they look at LLMs, and basically they look for hallucinations, they look for bias, they try to jailbreak the models and whatever. They don't use any LLMs within their own product. They use robust architectures of relevant different models, from classifiers to whatever it is, to do what they need to do with high accuracy. And they serve companies that are building AI, they're building agents, they're building whatever, but they themselves, because they have a strong team, because they know that not, you know, LLMs are good for certain things, but they're not good for other things, and you want accuracy, they're building the right way. And this is something that I always look at when people are saying, oh, we're building an AI whatever, or we're investing half of the next round of funding into AI. I'm like, okay, how and what technology are you using, and how do you know, how do you make sure that the data is accurate, and all this kind of stuff. And with that, when Gen AI became a thing, so Vista Equity Partners, who own part of iSIMS, the company that acquired me, they're known for their frameworks and black books for everything, right? And that's what they do, and they come and they advise their portfolio companies. This came straight from them, and they were like, nope, do not use LLMs for anything that requires regulatory, impact and oversight. Applications with no ability to interject human review. If human is not in the loop, nope, don't use it. And use cases where accuracy is critical. So for us, that recommender engine, LLMs have never made it in there. And there is absolutely no way that they will anytime soon. But consider productivity tasks, use cases involving text analysis, summarization, or generation, information discovery, human in the loop scenarios. So we started with really low-hanging fruit kind of thing. Summarize this interview, write a job description, blah, 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 things that didn't require high accuracy, and that we could also inject human in the loop and kind of go, well, we're going to get you started, but you should come in and have a look and see if this works for you, emails and, all that kind of stuff. So knowing that is very important. Now, this is one of my 4 out of 5. I really like design. I just like interesting things. Designing for AI is very, very tricky, and if you are not aware of that, it's, it'll be problematic. And what I mean by that is, even when we started, the one thing that I learned about building AI is that it takes steps away, right? It automates things. It takes clicks away. So we, started building UI on top of things that we have built, and the users were like, no, but I wanted to click on the thing. But what happens here? So explainability, which was on that slide with responsible AI a good few slides ago, you see it here. You see the circles, which are full or not full. You see the similar skills, similar experience. You kind of see skills overlap, includes, yada, 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 and you can click on that and you can get more. Now, this is, explainability is good practice within responsible AI. It works for the user because they're trying to understand, not the thing worked, but why did it work? And why did it result in this list? And then the interesting thing in a highly regulated industry where you need to give the users the ability to opt out is the fact that you might design a really nice AI interface and then the user says, do not use my CV, don't use AI in it. And then what do? You need a second UI that kind of toggles all of this off. Never mind the architectural issues that you have with that and all the data that you go, send, don't send. Again, scale is important when you're dealing with data and when you're building with AI. But it shows up in design in ways that you don't even know until you start building. And then responsible AI is not optional. These two images, I had them on a different deck. It was from a talk I used to give in what feels like a previous life when I was talking about bias and talent acquisition, and it was like the most photographed slide ever. These are two products that don't work, right? So first, the racist soap dispenser doesn't work on black skin. Imagine building a product that doesn't work for all your potential users. How is that smart for business? I don't know how, right? So it's not a nice to have, it's not a nice ethical whatever. It's a product that simply does not work for a big portion of the population. Why would you do that? I don't know. And then the second one is, this guy was trying to upload a photo to renew his driver's license, and the technology kept saying, upload a different photo with your eyes open. Now, clearly the guy's eyes are open. And by the way, if you feel a bit funny about hearing about these things, this is the kind of stuff that data scientists had to sit in and figure out how can bias come up, in what ways, how it can discriminate, and think of all the horrible potential scenarios and solve for them. And responsible AI is important because data scientists should be sitting in there thinking of all these horrible things and building products that don't do this, right? So customers are demanding it, regulators are demanding it. I just think it's business sense, to be honest, but and I actually wanted to show you, this is a very heavy, text-heavy kind of slide, but these were the kind of things that we were doing, right? So the second one there, we did an experiment based on the hypothesis that and by the way, we never put names, PII information never made it into training, never. But we still experimented and said, we're not giving you the name. It's nowhere near the training data. However, we're going to do this experiment where we're going to say the origin of candidate's name or gender specificity of a name can unintentionally influence the matching score, right? So we wanted to say, my name is Andreea. Andreea is female everywhere in the world. In Italy, there's a bunch of Andreas that are guys, right? Does that influence? And again, I'm not giving you the training data, but I'm still gonna check for it because there's a bunch of other proxies that could tell that I'm a woman. I'm not playing hurling, I'm playing camogie or whatever. I don't know, I'm making this up, right? And then things like, there's a million things here, but anyway, an example of bias would be a case where all senior roles go to male candidates rather than female. This actually happened. Google was serving ads for senior roles more to male than to females. So these are all kind of things that we tested for. And this is not something that someone tells you, this is how you should test. You have to sit there and think of the horrible scenarios that might happen and all the crap that might have informed the training data and kind of go, we don't want that to happen, can we test for it? And we actually, we have patents around this, we patented an inclusivity score, and this was an evergreen roadmap item. I had to report into the CTO every month. How are we doing around bias and fairness? What are the next thing that we did? How are we making sure that we're not biased against different populations and so on and so forth. So that's kind of it. This is my second last slide. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of change. I have a good friend who been running a translation company for 20 years, and she's like, Andreea, my business is kind of gone. I can't scale it anymore, and not even that I can scale, I can't sustain it on the work that is coming from our customers, because they do the translation with the LLMs and they kind of then want people to check it, but it's not big enough for me to build an actual business. There's a lot of stuff that is, the world is changing. Where is it change? I don't know. I think, in my view, is don't fall in love with the technology, but know it. And, hopefully today I might have given you one or two nuggets to kind of do that. And that's me. Ping me anytime. I'm always happy to talk about things.
Thanks, Andreea. That was amazing. Hopefully, we have a few minutes for some questions. We do have one that came in from Slido, and also, if you want to put in your question on Slido, you can. There is a number on the next slide there that has a code 3094914, and you can put that in, and we'll get it up here, or you can just raise your hand and we'll give you a microphone also. But someone has put a question in here that says, when developing and bootstrapping a minimum viable product, at what point would you say it is viable to look for marketing funding?
Wow. Ideally, I would have more context. Why marketing funding? Why not any other? As an ex-founder, marketing is probably the last thing I would spend money on in the beginning. I'm sorry if there are marketing professionals in the room. Certainly that's how, look, that's kind of how I did it, right? Before I founded Opening.io with my colleague Adrian, I used to speak about things, I used to organize, I used to do a lot of community things, and I was really, really good at spending zero money on marketing, but getting myself on the stage. I hustled my way on the stage, making sure that we look bigger than we are. I only paid once in the lifetime of the company for a booth at a very relevant conference in the States that actually led to our acquisition. So we were brutal around that. But I suppose I would need a little bit more information, but I would say, and I would ask, why do you need the marketing money to do what? To put it out there? If it's a B2C thing, and you need to put it in front of a lot of people, which, by the way, some VCs, don't like B2C that much because it requires a lot of money. But whatever you have, I would say at the very beginning, since you kind of said that it's an MVP, I would just get very, very creative. If I want to spend 100 euros on marketing to get in front of ABC audience, is there any way I can get in front of that audience for free? So whoever you are, you can come to me after and just give me the details, but I would mostly say, don't spend it.
Are there other questions that people haven't typed into Slido that they might want to ask? Yeah, Alex, here, I'll give you a mic.
You talked earlier about the VectorDB, and 11 years ago you had a point in time where you considered spinning out. What prevented you from doing that?
That just going, we have to start again. Look, it would have meant killing the existing company, and it's just not something that we're prepared to do. We saw the opportunity on the other end, but the existing company as it was working, and hence, we got to sell it. Even as late as last September, I left the company that acquired us last October. I was pinging my ex-co-founder, Adrian, and going, do you mind if I go to Vista Equity Partners and just tell them, I want to spin this out. Let's just take it and let's build it and let's da-da-da. And he was like, oh, right? So, but he's working on an infrastructure thing right now. So we didn't do it because it would have been a different business altogether. And, you know, but the remnants of not doing it and the opportunity and kind of still lingers and lives, and it's one of those things. Sliding doors and all.
Thank you. There was a question earlier for the other panel, but I actually thought it might be interesting to throw it at you, which was after hiring somebody, how quickly do you wait to decide if they're a right fit for the team or not? How long does that take?
Oh, this was a lesson that I learned, and it was tough. And I wish I acted on my instinct, and I didn't, because I'm nice. And that's not good for business sometimes. So we made a very important hire, and it didn't really work out. But then we got acquired, and I needed them there because I was busy with the acquisition, and that was an entire thing. But the signs were there very, very early. So I would say be brutal. I would be now. Now I would just, and even if you're, just kill it. You know, and actually post-acquisition, I had to do that. But I guess the incentive in the first instance was results and money, and then the acquisition came in and we were kind of working through it, and, you know, it was good enough, blah, but we were paying a lot of money, so, but then post-acquisition, it was just hitting on morale, it was bringing negativity in, it was just pulling culture in ways that I was brutally not okay with. I don't, you know, so we had to let them go. So I'd say just act, just be not nice for a second. You are nice to the rest of the colleagues, you are nice to the business, you are nice to your mental health, you are nice to other things, so.
Thank you for that. We've got now the Slido questions are starting to come in here. So we have a couple of new ones in. This one, talent and data point related. What is the reason for potential candidates to upload a resume only to be asked to fill out a form with the same details?
Yeah, there is no point. It's just crap legacy tech, to be honest. That's the reality of it. So. When we were building, and by the way, let me just tell you where the building of my company came from. I had zero experience in talent acquisition. I never worked in recruitment. I've never worked in HR. I knew absolutely zero about the space, as did my co-founder, who, very talented person, won the programming Olympiad nationally in Romania many years ago, genius. He sends his CV to all these different places. And then, long story short, the job that he goes for, and he got some jobs in San Francisco, decided not the US, moved to Ireland. The job that he picked, he was rediscovered by an external recruiter and placed in for a finder's fee while his CV sat in this company's database since 4 months previous, right? So we built all of this from a candidate perspective. So to this particular question, we actually built on-the-fly parsing that when you send your CV, you would pull out all the information, make the match, because this was the future that we envisioned. But unfortunately, legacy tech, multiple technologies that exist embedded in a company's HR or TA stack, and all of these together make for a really, really, really poor experience. There is literally no point to it other than, you know, bad product.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up. You mentioned owning the data and encouraging feedback loops early. Are there any methods or tips to encourage this from the start?
I was in my head when you started the first.
This is the feedback loop. Owning your data, encouraging feedback loops. I think that that was when you did a slide where you said every feature is also a data collection point.
Yes. So look, everyone starts with an MVP or whatever you want to call it, the thing that delights the customers. Like when you build that thing, you're obviously building for an outcome, and that's what AI is all about. That's what building algorithms is all about. There's an outcome. You're kind of telling the model, find the next word. That's how it does it. But it's like there's an outcome, right? So when you decide, okay, I'm building a product. This is the value that it brings to my customers, and these are the 3 features that I'm going to put in front of them. Like really consider those 3 features and give yourself, the product, your customer, the future of this company, the best possible outcome by engineering that workflow kind of end to end and getting some kind of a feedback loop back into your world. And by the way, these feedback loops don't automatically inform the AI. That's not how it works, but at least you have them. They're tagged. So whatever it is that you're building, I don't know what it is, an app that recognizes plants out there. Like how do you get to value the quickest possible? And then what can you get the user to do in order to reinforce that the value that you're trying to provide is correct or not? So I know that's very generalist. And again, I'd love to, whoever asked that question, come to me and discuss but be deliberate about the first things that you build and build in a way that it gives back. It gives you back a lot of the things that you need, the data, the feedback, the whatever that thing might be. I suppose that's what I'd say about that.
Cool. Thanks very much. We have a couple more questions, and we have time for probably one more. There's 2 questions here that are related to investability and venture capital. So I'm going to suggest that the next session after the coffee break is Show Me the Funding Panel. I'm going to suggest bring those to the funding panel. And we've got Andreea here for the moment, and there's a really interesting UX question that I think would be good for you to tackle. It says, you mentioned that we shouldn't use AI to take control away from humans. Can you give some examples of a mistake you made and how you fixed it?
Yeah, so in the world of recruiters, users were used to writing the long Boolean strings. They were used to kind of going, with CPL, they had 3 million CVs in their database. They're like, okay, I'm looking for a sales exec now, and I'm going to build this Boolean string that will take me half an hour, and that will search every nook and corner of the DB, and it's going to bring me all the, and I put in the work so it feels real, and it feels, it's kind of nearly like the way the search engines that look for flights for you show you all the things that they're looking at. They could work quicker, but they're kind of taking a little bit longer. So you think, oh, we're doing all the work. We're looking in every nook and corner. Wow, this is like the best thing ever, right? So when we took the ability to put in some of these keywords and put in some of this from the people, they were like, and we gave them a meaningful list. They were like, oh, but how did you get there? And probably in their mind was like, I would like to know how you got there, because in my head I'm building these Boolean strings and sometimes I'm changing a little thing and then good stuff comes out. Like, how did you do it? So we were taking away filters and they were asking us for filters back, and we were like, you don't need them because the thing does it automatically. So we had to actually put back certain things like these filters and let people put in the word, even though it was just not necessary. And sometimes it's around seniority. Sometimes it's around things that the engine could just solve on its own. But we just had to go, okay, fair enough. You want to touch and feel the thing, give them the filters back, give them the whatever back, even though,
Sorry.